Sample number 16 is a patch pocket with a matching point, and it's mounted to a base. So think of a patch pocket that you would put on a shirt, a back pocket of a pant, or maybe a coat. You'll see that there's a seam here, so we're going to do this corner when we stitch. And the first step is to take your 3 pieces that comprise sample 16. You have a top portion of your pocket, you have a lower pocket, and then you have the base. And this is the foundation that we will actually stitch the pocket onto. After you cut and before you remove your pins, you'll see that you have these 4 X's on your foundation piece. You want to take a marking pencil. For our purposes, because we're using muslin, we can just take a regular pencil. But if you have a marking pencil, you can use that. And you're going to mark all 4 of those X's. That's going to indicate where that pocket will be placed. Your next step is to take your 2 pieces, top and lower, and you'll see this matching dot. You're going to want to mark that and mark the top piece right through the paper onto the fabric. Also, do not forget to clip your notches because that's your fold line so that we can create a nice hem on this. Before I begin putting my pocket together, I am going to overlock the outside of my foundation so that it doesn't fray. If you don't have your overlock, you can zigzag, or you can use another treatment if you want to turn it back and stitch it, that's fine. But you just want it to be a neat piece that won't fray. Then I'm going to look at my pocket. If you remember from our sample where we had a pivot technique, we stitched that corner. We know that this piece, when we place it, will not just turn when we go the other direction. So what we do is we clip. I have my marking here. I'm going to clip straight down to about a 1/16 of an inch shy of that marking. Now my piece is a little more flexible and it will turn and bend when I place my pocket there. The top piece needs to have a pocket opening that doesn't fray. So if you notice where we clipped our notches, we have 3/4 of an inch here at the top. So I'm going to fold along my notches and I'm going to press that flat. I'm going to take this top portion, 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to press that flat. We call this a double fold hem. Now fold it and fold it again, and you have a clean top. I'm going to go back to my machine and I'm going to top stitch this. When you're top stitching this, you want to make sure that you catch all layers in your hem. So if you have to go just inside that hem edge, you could do so. But we're about a 1/2 inch away. We're going to lock the beginning and the end of the hem and go right across. Once I top stitch this, I'm going to go and I'm going to press it down so I have a nice clean edge. And now it's time to stitch the top and the bottom pocket together. Remember, I've clipped here to make it easier to get this to stitch to this evenly with no puckers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put right sides together. I want to make sure that my finished pocket opening is the clean side and not the folded side. I'm going to match my points here and here, and I'm going to line up the seam with my lower pocket, making sure that you match those dots together. And I'm going to pin. We know we're going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam because that's what our pattern tells us. So we're going to go in and we're going to start. I'm going to lock the beginning and the end of my stitch. And before I get to my pin, I'm going to take it out so I don't break my needle. And you're going to take your time and you're going to stitch right down to that dot. Adjust your needle if you have to. And then I'm going to needle down, foot up, and I am going to pull in the opposite direction, smoothing out everything underneath. So I'm going to make sure that there's nothing puckering and it seems and feels smooth underneath. I'm going to make sure I find my 1/2 inch here, and I'm going to go down the other side. Again, don't forget to lock your stitch at the end. After I've done stitching, I'm going to press it down, and you can press your seam allowance toward the bottom. If you've done it correctly and you go right down to where that dot is marking, you'll see you have no pleats, no holes. It's just really clean. A lot of times you can correct a little mistake or error with your pressing, but you can see that this is nice and flat, it's clean, and it's ready to put on the base. So this is my finished piece, and you can see that I have a folded edge here. If you go back to your pattern, you have a 3/8 seam allowance on the side. I'm going to go to my wrong side of my piece, and I'm going to fold back 3/8 of an inch all the way around and press that flat. Take your time and do it neatly. I'll give you a little tip on the corners. If you fold them diagonally, and then I fold this way and fold up 3/8, it creates its own corner. So press all the way around to create a folded pocket ready to top stitch on. So I've pressed my edges back on my pocket. Here's the wrong side. One thing you do have to be aware of is these corners up here. If I just press this back as it is and I go to sew it, I might end up with some of that raw edge peeking out. So another little trick you can do is you can actually, after you've pressed it out, just fold that corner down and give it a press again. Okay, so that fold down so that when we top stitch it, you won't see any of that raw edge. Okay, it'll be hidden in there. I folded back my 3/8, and again, if you didn't fold your corners back here and you pressed straight up, if you press straight up like this, again, you don't want any raw edges to peek out. So the little trick you can do is you can fold that corner in and give it a press. And then when you top stitch the whole thing down, everything will be hidden and secure, and it'll be neat, and we will end up with this. Now you'll notice in this pocket I do not have the fold top stitch down. That's fine. This is a previous sample that I made. So now we're ready to put it on its foundation. And on the foundation, I have my 4 dots, and I'm going to line up my pocket to match those 4 dots. And I'm going to pin that in place. Here's my sample pinned in place. I'm pinning in the corners and I'm pinning across because I'm going to try stitching down this end. I'm going to turn, and then I'm going to turn. So now we're going to go ahead and top stitch. We are going to top stitch our pocket with a 1/16 inch seam all around the edge. You're going to lock at the beginning and at the end. So I've begun stitching. I've come down to my corner here, and when you get to the very end, and you want, again, a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge, you're going to have your needle down and your presser foot up, and you are going to turn to continue going down the other side. After you stitch, you're going to press what because you've secured it to your foundation, and there's your finished pocket.